A very good morning and welcome to another edition of ACFIM Talks. My name is Abel Eseru. Today we are going to be discussing about the alliance of opposition political parties in Uganda. This week, the opposition leaders have signed yet another agreement to foster cooperation among themselves in any upcoming elections and other efforts geared towards ousting President Yoweri Museveni from power. The agreement, which was signed during a meeting at Hotel Africana on Monday afternoon, attracted leaders from four political parties, which include Forum for Democratic Change, National Unity Platform, Justice Forum, People's Progressive Party. In their joint statement, which was led by the National Unity Platform's Secretary General, that's Mr. Lewis David Ubongoya, he noted that the recent blatant election cheating, particularly in the by-election stage in Kayunga, Omoro, and Soroti, served as the impetus for the new agreement. In all the last general elections, several political parties and formations have continuously participated with belief in democracy and rule of law as the modest means through which they could achieve a peaceful transition of power in the nation of Uganda and changes of leaders at lower levels. Unfortunately, the quality of elections have now gone from bad to worse, each election being worse than the previous one. The joint statement reads, after giving the background to what happened in the recent three by-elections, the leaders on behalf of their political parties and formations noted that going forward they will unite to defeat the common enemy by saying that going forward we shall jointly or severally use any upcoming elections to organize and rally the population to defeat the democratic rights, to defend the democratic rights and election madness that has developed the country since independence. That was part of what was in the joint statement. So in today's ACFIM talks, we shall be joined by uh, two members. One is a professor and another is a lawyer. Professor Mwambusa Nebeza, who is a celebrated political historian from Makerere University. He has also written a lot in terms of these very issues of political alliances. Professor, you're welcome.
Thank you, and good afternoon, good evening, good morning, viewers and listeners.
And then we shall also be joined by Mr. Pius Tuheyo, who is a politician and also a lawyer. He has also litigated on very many issues in the political spectrum of Uganda. The latest one, which we can all know, was on the age limit. He was one of the lawyers who was part of defending, trying to defend that they shouldn't remove the age limit and also from the constitution. Pius, you're welcome.
Thank you, Abel. Good morning, everybody, and the viewers. And Professor, it's a pleasure to be with you on this platform.
Pleasure to meet you too.
Okay, I will start with Professor Mwambusa Ndembeza. You, as a political historian, what do you make of this new alliance by the opposition political parties, and do you think it will really help them achieve their goal?
Thank you. First of all, this is not the first political alliance, but I think it is an alliance for possibly two purposes: for negotiating for the opening of the political space and keep it open, and also for struggling. Struggling and negotiating are not the same thing. Yes, it has been triggered by the election, but I think the objective is beyond elections, and to go to maybe how to collectively struggle for a possible transition from the current political order to another political order. So going to the electoral alliance, yes, there is need for electoral alliance to try and see whether something can be done in their favor. That is for the opposition alliance, because elections in Uganda have been marred by irregularities, or we call it rigging. Unfortunately, this trajectory seems not to be waning. You can see that as far back as 1961, there was electoral violence. There is still electoral violence. There was what is called electoral gerrymandering, changing constituencies. There is now changing constituencies, because it is true that in Soroti East constituency, there was a mishap in the demarcation of the constituency. But how come that elections have been held only in the east and not in the west? Because if there was a mishap, that means the irregularity was in both constituencies. It should have now been repeated in both constituencies, not in one and leaving the other. It is also marred by militarism. The state or those in power using the military in political competition. And according to your program or your NGO, you are also about abuse of finance in using electoral processes. And the use of finances, especially abuse of state finances in these elections, is still continuing. So there is no single party in opposition or a single oppositional force that I think can reverse this trend. There is need for concerted efforts. Will it succeed or will it not succeed? That is also a different argument. However, the alliance, I think, is also for possible creating a space, creating a possibility for political transition. Now, let me explain and define some issues here. From the public debate I am listening to, or we are listening to, there is confusion. The debaters in the public space are confusing succession with transition. The two are not the same. I think what people are doing is to debate political succession that is succeeding President Museveni. But I think even if you succeeded President Museveni and yet the political order remained the same, that would not lead to a political transition. And yet I think the debaters want a political transition from one political order to another political order. Therefore, they should be thinking of working for the political transition from this current political order characterized by military in politics, characterized by using finances in the elections, characterized by gerrymandering, characterized by intolerance, to a political order, a new dispensation that would be characterized by civil politics, civil competition of ideas and competition of policies, at the same time where elections management is not managed by the security forces or by the police and the military as it is today, whereby even electoral and constitutional reviews are done without using the military, without using finances, without manipulation. That is the transition we are seeing about. And these electoral alliances, I don't know whether they are alliances for getting into offices, taking positions, or they are alliances for ushering Uganda into a new political order. And the participants in these alliances, that is as agents, as individuals, I do not know whether they also are on the same page, i.e., do they understand what they are allying for beyond allying for electoral purposes, or do they ally when they understand that there is need for transiting to a new political order? Because if there is a meeting of the minds, if there is an understanding of why they are allying, and basically not allying for positions, but allying for transition for a new political order, then the alliance will succeed and the alliance will work. But if the alliance is for competition, for positions in government, then the alliance will not work and will not succeed and may not be maintained. That is my position.
Thank you, Professor. Mr. Pius, well, you've just heard what Professor has been sharing, and he has said we have had alliances before, and one of the things which the regime has been using to make sure that these alliances even don't go strong, as they have militarized the entire state. They are using money to do other things, and also they manage the election the way they want. They can create new constituencies and districts to give their own beneficiaries who should contest there, and they make sure that they win those elections. So you, as a lawyer and one of the persons who has been at the forefront of Uganda's politics, you've seen alliances have come aimed at maybe causing political change or any other thing, but oftentimes they have collapsed. Should Ugandans expect anything different from this new alliance? You're muted. First, unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you, Abel. I hope you can hear me right now. Yes, thank you, Professor, for the preamble and the detailed discussion. What I can say is alliances have been here. Like Professor has said, we have seen the IPC alliance, we have seen the TDA, the attempted alliance that later failed. Therefore, it's not easy for politicians to ally, especially in this country. But elsewhere, we have seen alliances work. Case in point, Kenya has tried this. Kenya has gone through a very challenging time, especially during elections, right from the days of the late president, Arap Moi. Then there came in Mwai Kibaki. We saw what happened in 2007 during the elections, immediately after the elections between Raila Odinga and Mwai Kibaki, that the violence that happened thereafter. Since then, the Kenyans decided to promulgate a new constitution, the constitution that has seen them transit from what they had been through, especially the violent electoral processes, and to where they are today. They are going through a transition that is expected to be peaceful, since the current president is not on the ballot. Therefore, they are going to have a new president. In Uganda, it is a different story. After 37 years, we have not had a peaceful transition. And the transition in this sense is a transition that is not a periodic election. What most of the politicians in NRM usually talk about is that we have periodic elections that see that we have a new president, a new government that is elected every after 5 years. But the transition that requires a new set of government, new people that lead the government, is completely different. We have seen in Ghana during the days of Jerry Rawlings, that transition was not easy. Most of the politicians or the leaders that were in the government, to transit and leave government and state house wasn't easy. This required the enactment of a transition act in Ghana that set up a position in government that requires somebody else to handle the transition. Therefore, alliances in this country, especially now that the opposition are agreeing on the fact that they cannot win an election. Elections in Uganda are constitutional. The constitution provides for free and fair elections. Now, what we have in Uganda is the elections. We do not look at the free and fair part of the constitutional provision. What would amount to a free and fair election, at least there are bare minimum standards that we should look at, especially the mobility of candidates should be assured, candidates' security should be assured, and then the polling day and the electoral commission should be independent. An electoral commission is an independent body. It's a constitutional body that must be independent as per the constitution. But what we see is a different story. At least what the the opposition political parties are trying to do, I would want to relate it to what NRM and DP have gone into. For NRM and DP, it's a cooperation agreement, but on a different platform. I had Professor calling it a cooptation, a cooptation agreement, that the DP and DP was co-opted by, which I personally agree with. However, the NUP, FDC, GEMA, and PPP what they signed is a communique. We don't know what happened behind the door, what they discussed in detail, or all the modus operandi of the communique they published. However, if you look at the election that happened in Soroti recently, we saw the Prime Minister was accused of being more or less like a walking bullion van. He was splashing money, she was splashing money, and she was buying off voters. We saw the violence that happened. We saw video clips of the NRM Electoral Commission chairperson ordering arrests of people, which is completely out of his scope. What happens at during elections? If you have any complaint, the laws provide that you must talk to the Electoral Commission. Your issue must be addressed to the Electoral Commission. Then they can provide a solution to that. However, we saw that the NRM was guiding what the Electoral Commission should be doing. So in the instant case, they are coming by elections. We have one in Kisoro, we have one in the Rwenzori region. Therefore, these forces have to come together to see that we can have a free and fair election. They have to fight together, which has failed in many by-elections. We saw in Bujiri, the days of that campaign that brought Honorable Asman Basalirwa. They failed to agree on a particular candidate. We saw this happen in Hoima when the candidate for FDC lost the election, that is currently Honorable Asinansi Nyakato. We saw this happen in Arua when Honorable Kasiano Wadri contested and beat Bruce, who was the candidate for FDC. And therefore, I think it's the right time for these parties to come together and have single candidates. However, having a single candidate does not guarantee winning an election, especially in the current circumstances. The circumstances that we are battling with are especially finance and militarization of the elections. We have seen this through the elections since 1996. We have seen, at least I witnessed the 2001 election, 2006, 2011, and 2016, and the 2021 election, where at least by going by official figures, 52 people were murdered in only 2 days by security organs on 18th and 19th November 2020. That was when Honorable Chagulanyi was arrested in Eastern Uganda. Therefore, I conclude saying that we have to look at, these forces must be looking beyond elections. They must be looking at how we can transit from the kind of election that we have today to a more civilized election. And this can be done, in my opinion, in 2 ways. One is by having what everybody was talking about, a national dialogue. We need a national dialogue that will bring together all the players, not necessarily only politics, but across board. Professors, we need religious leaders, we need cultural leaders, we need civil society organizations, we need ordinary citizens, businessmen, and everybody that can contribute to this dialogue. Secondly, we need a constitutional review commission. We have to look at what is provided for under the Constitution today and what we have at least seen since 1995. We have not allowed this Constitution to operate since it was promulgated in 1995. The safety valves that were there were all removed, and what transpired before the removal, everybody who has been around has seen what has happened. Therefore, a Constitutional Review Commission that will help us to assess what we have what the constitution has, what the constitution we have has, if it has worked for the country, or if we need a whole completely different constitution. And therefore, elections that we have today, in my opinion, do not are not what was envisaged in the constitution. And therefore, Article 3, especially Article 3, whenever we veer off the constitution, then the citizens of this country have the right and the powers to bring order. And that is what the PFT has been trying to preach for over years. And since we have failed to look at, since we as a country, really, we have failed to honor or to do what the Constitution provides for, especially under Article 1 and under Article 2. Therefore, I think Article 3 might be invoked by citizens to bring order in this country. That is what I can say as of now.
Thank you, Pius and Professor. We are going to go for a short break, and then we shall return